On a quiet evening in 1943, a group of German officers gathered for music, drinks, and laughter. They smiled for the camera. They celebrated with friends. They looked like ordinary people enjoying a night off after work. Their workplace was called Sobibor, one of the Nazi extermination camps. By the time that photograph was taken, hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women, and children had already been murdered there. So here's the question that has haunted historians for generations. How did ordinary people become willing participants in one of history's greatest crimes? The Holocaust did not happen in a single day. It wasn't the result of one speech, one law, or even one man's hatred alone. It was built step by step through propaganda, fear, obedience, ambition, and the gradual acceptance of the unacceptable. This is the story of how an entire system turned prejudice into policy and policy into industrialized murder. Because to understand the Holocaust is not only to remember its victims, it is to understand how civilization itself can unravel when hatred is allowed to become ordinary. When people imagine the Holocaust, they often picture Adolf Hitler giving orders from Berlin, but Hitler did not carry out the killings himself. The Holocaust depended on thousands of ordinary men who chose to become part of the machine. In the 1930s, the SS presented itself as an elite organization. The black uniforms, strict discipline, and promise of status attracted young recruits from across Germany. Some joined because they believed in Nazi ideology. Others wanted stable employment, power, or simply a sense of belonging. Whatever their reasons, they soon entered a system that reshaped how they saw the people around them. Training did more than teach military discipline. It taught recruits to stop seeing Jews, political prisoners, and other targeted groups as fellow human beings. They were described as enemies, parasites, or threats to Germany's future. Once that idea took hold, cruelty became easier to justify. At camps like Dachau, new guards were introduced to violence as part of everyday life. Prisoners were beaten for the smallest mistakes. Humiliation became routine. Those who showed hesitation risked being mocked as weak. Those who embraced brutality earned praise and promotion. The system rewarded obedience. Men who followed orders without question found opportunities for advancement. They received better assignments, more authority, and greater responsibility. Over time, many no longer saw themselves as individuals making moral choices. They saw themselves as efficient servants of the state. As Nazi Germany expanded across Europe, the concentration camp system expanded with it. What had begun as prisons for political opponents gradually became a vast network stretching across occupied territory. Camps served different purposes: detention, forced labor, transit, and eventually extermination. But they all relied on the same principle. Human lives could be reduced to numbers, labor, or obstacles to be removed. By 1941, the war had entered a new and far more radical phase. Germany invaded the Soviet Union, opening a conflict unlike any it had fought before. Behind the advancing army came special SS killing units, known as the Einsatzgruppen. Their task was brutally simple: eliminate Jews, communist officials, and anyone the regime considered an enemy. Entire communities disappeared in mass shootings. Men, women, and children were marched to ravines or open pits and murdered in groups. At places like Babi Yar near Kiev, tens of thousands of Jews were killed within just 2 days. Yet even these shootings revealed a problem for the Nazi leadership. They were slow, ammunition-intensive, and, in some cases, psychologically difficult for the shooters themselves. The regime began searching for a method that was faster, more efficient, and emotionally distant from the act of killing. That search would lead to the construction of extermination camps, places designed not to imprison people, but to murder them on an industrial scale. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, the war entered a new and far darker phase. The campaign, known as Operation Barbarossa, was more than a military invasion. Nazi leaders saw it as a racial war. Behind the advancing German army came special SS units called the Einsatzgruppen. Their mission was not to capture territory, but to eliminate those the regime considered enemies, especially Jewish communities. Town after town, families were forced from their homes, marched to ravines or forests, and shot. One of the most infamous massacres took place at Babi Yar, near Kiev. Over 2 days in September 1941, more than 33,000 Jewish men, women, and children were murdered. For the killers, however, these mass shootings created an unexpected problem. Taking thousands of lives face to face, day after day, proved psychologically exhausting for many of the men carrying them out. Some drank heavily, others suffered breakdowns. Nazi leaders were not troubled by the suffering of their victims, but by the strain placed on their executioners. So they searched for a more efficient method. The answer was a network of extermination camps built specifically for mass murder. Places like Sobibor, Treblinka, and Belzec were not prisons. They were factories of death. Most people who arrived there were never registered. Within hours of stepping off the train, they were dead. Auschwitz-Birkenau became the largest of them all. There, the process was refined into an industrial system. Trains arrived daily from across occupied Europe. Doctors selected who would be used for forced labor and who would be sent directly to the gas chambers. Every step from confiscating luggage to disposing of bodies was organized with chilling efficiency. What had begun with hateful ideas and isolated acts of violence had become something unprecedented. An entire bureaucracy devoted to murder. And behind every train schedule, every transport list, and every camp gate were ordinary people, guards, clerks, engineers, doctors, and administrators, each performing a task that kept the machinery running. For those who arrived at Auschwitz, survival was no longer measured in years or months. It was measured one selection, one roll call, and one day at a time. For those arriving at Auschwitz, the journey did not end when the train stopped. It began on the platform. As the cattle cars opened, frightened families stepped into a world they could not yet understand. Within minutes, SS doctors separated the new arrivals into 2 groups. Those considered fit enough to work were sent one way. The elderly, the sick, and most mothers with young children were sent another. Many believed they were heading for showers. Instead, they were walking toward the gas chambers. The deception was deliberate. It kept thousands of people calm until the very last moments of their lives. Those selected for labor entered a different kind of nightmare. Prisoners were stripped of their names, their belongings, and often even their hair. They were given numbers, forced into overcrowded barracks, and expected to survive on starvation rations while performing exhausting physical labor. Disease spread quickly. Beatings were common. Every day brought another roll call, another selection, another reminder that survival was never guaranteed. Yet even in a place built to erase humanity, many refused to let it disappear completely. Some prisoners secretly shared food with strangers. Others risked their lives to comfort the sick, protect children, or preserve evidence of what was happening inside the camp. One survivor, Anita Lasker, escaped immediate death for an unexpected reason. She told the SS she could play the cello. Instead of being sent directly to the gas chamber, she was assigned to the women's orchestra. Each morning and evening, the musicians were forced to play as thousands of prisoners marched to and from forced labor. The music became part of the camp's cruel routine, a reminder that culture and barbarity could exist side by side. Beyond the barbed wire, German companies profited from this system. Prisoners were worked until they collapsed, then replaced by new arrivals from the endless stream of trains crossing occupied Europe. Auschwitz was no longer just a prison. It had become the center of a vast machine, where human lives were treated as disposable resources. But even in the darkest places, people resisted. And as the war turned against Nazi Germany, the system that had seemed unstoppable began to crack. The Holocaust did not end because people suddenly rediscovered their humanity. It ended because Nazi Germany was defeated. As Allied armies advanced from the west and the Soviet army pushed in from the east, the machinery of genocide began to collapse. The SS tried to erase what they had done, destroying camps, burning documents, and forcing prisoners on brutal death marches. But the evidence survived. So did the people. When Allied soldiers entered camps such as Buchenwald, Bergen-Belsen, and Dachau, they found scenes that defied belief. Thousands of prisoners were alive, but only barely. Entire barracks were filled with disease, starvation, and death. Even seasoned soldiers struggled to understand what they were seeing. Many later said that no words or photographs could fully capture it. After the war, the world promised that such crimes would never happen again. The Nuremberg trials held many leading Nazi officials accountable and established that I was only following orders could not excuse crimes against humanity. Yet justice was incomplete. Many perpetrators escaped punishment, returned to ordinary lives, or simply disappeared into the post-war world. Today, the Holocaust is remembered not only because 6 million Jews were murdered, but because it showed how an educated, modern society could descend into organized mass murder when hatred became policy, propaganda replaced truth, and ordinary people chose obedience over conscience. The survivors carried those memories for the rest of their lives, so future generations would never have to learn them through experience. The Holocaust is no longer living history. With each passing year, fewer survivors remain to tell their stories. That is why remembering matters. Memory is not about preserving the past. It is about protecting the future. Because the greatest danger is not forgetting the dates or the places. It is forgetting how easily human beings can be persuaded to look away while evil becomes ordinary. If you enjoyed this documentary, consider subscribing to the channel for more stories from the Second World War. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.